In this lesson, we're going to introduce adaptivity. Adaptivity can be thought of solving for the unknown and also setting up relationships between faces and edges. So in this case, I'm working on the file called adaptivity.iam, and it can be found in your Chapter 6 exercise folder. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new component. I could also create this in its own file as well. I'm just going to do it here. I'm going to call this plate 2. And I'm going to constrain the sketch plane to this inside plane right here. And you'll notice I'm just going to draw in a simple rectangle. What I'm not going to do is I'm not going to apply any dimensions. So in this case, what I'm trying to do is I'm going to have this inside rectangle plate fit with inside this shelled part. So what I'm going to do is right-click, done, get out of the rectangle tool. And then from the browser, I'm going to right-click on that sketch 1, and I'm going to click on Adaptive. And you'll notice when I do that, I now have the two arcs showing that it's adaptive, meaning that there's going to be a relationship between this part and another part. So what we'll do now is click Return, and I'm going to go ahead and extrude this out, and I'm going to make it a little bit larger. I'm going to make it 20 millimeters. Go ahead and click OK. Now I'm going to click Return one more time to get to the top level assembly. So in this case, I can grab the plate that we just created, but right now it's free to move. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a couple assembly constraints. So I'm just going to hit C, and let's apply a couple mate constraints with an offset of 0 there. And let's slide this back so we can see it. And do the same thing on this opposite face. Click on Apply, and that's going to position it in that lower left-hand corner. And what I'm going to do with Adaptivity now, turned on, is I'm going to pick the inside face, and this is where we're going to set up the relationship for Adaptivity. You'll notice that the part has stretched out. Click on Apply. So now, as the base plate changes, so will the plate that we just created. So let's go ahead and test that. I'm going to double click on the main plate, and I'm going to edit the dimensions from sketch 1. Let's make a significant change. Let's change it to 200 by 120. And click Update. And let's back off. So you'll see right now that the original plate has been updated. And let's click on Return. And once I have done that, the second plate has adapted to the first plate. So with Adaptivity, it's going to be solving for the under-constrained. So that's why I did not place any dimensions on the first or the second rectangle. So if there were dimensions, they would have taken precedence over the adaptivity. Now if I right click on plate 2 and I turn off the adaptive, and I'm going to go back and make a change again to the main plate, and let's expand the sketch, and let's just change that back down to 150. And let's take it to 100. And then when I click on Return, in this case you're seeing that we're getting an error. And the errors basically are telling me the last two mate constraints that I applied, they can no longer solve correctly, being that the faces no longer match. So I'm just going to go ahead and accept that error. As you can see, it's definitely not fitting very well at this point. I can see my errors that I'm getting. So I'm going to minimize that. And I'm going to make the plate again adaptive. So by clicking on Adaptive, it tells me again that it can go back and solve. What we recommend is turning the adaptivity off when you're done solving for the unknown. In this case, you may want to go back, make that plate active, go back on the sketch level, apply your dimensions. So what you want to do is you want to be a little bit careful with adaptivity so you don't have a circle redundancy, and that would cause you problems later on down the road. So what we'll do is we'll just click return, get out of the sketch. So what I can do now is I'm just going to right click on that extrusion and uncheck the adaptive. For the last portion of this exercise, I've closed out of the adaptivity.iam without saving the changes, and I reopened up that file. Inside of the file, there's the part called adapt pin. What I'm going to do is turn the visibility of that component back on. And what I want to do in this case is I want to adapt the hole to change to the diameter of the pin. Now, for me to do that, I'm going to make the bottom plate the active part, and I'm going to right click on the hole, and what I want to do is I want to turn on adaptive, basically giving the privilege for the hole to adapt to the diameter of the pin. So I'm going to click on the return tool, take me back to the top level assembly, and we're going to do this the exact same way that we did in the previous portion of this lesson. I'm going to apply an assembly constraint. And again, I'm going to get in really tight here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Select Other tool. So right click, Select Other. And we're going to cycle through until we get the circular face of the hole. And I'm also going to now select the circular face of the pin. And let's place in a diameter or an offset value of 1 so we can see it a little bit easier. So in this case, you can see that the hole diameter has changed to reflect the diameter of the pin. Now let's go ahead and test that. I'm going to make the pin the active part, and let's go ahead and edit the diameter. Right now we can see that it has a diameter of 10. Let's change it to 20. And let's back off just a little bit. Click on Return to the top level assembly, and you can see that the hole has been updated to reflect the new diameter. And we can also change the offset value with our assembly constraint. So if I double click on that, I could change that value, and let's just put it to something very minimal like 0.01. And the hole has updated to reflect that new change as shown here.